At 45, nothing about your Tuesday looks rich. You drive the same aging car to the same office and park beside a coworker's new SUV. At lunch, someone jokes that your car deserves a retirement party. You laugh with everyone else. That evening, you open your investment account to check a transfer. The balance reads $1,108,000. There is no champagne waiting in the kitchen. No one calls to congratulate you. You do not feel like a different person than you did that morning. That is the strange part. You got rich without ever having a day that felt like getting rich. 15 years earlier, you had $50,000 invested and $15,000 in cash. Your salary was $95,000. It was good money, but nowhere near the kind of income people imagine behind a seven-figure portfolio. You never sold a company. You never inherited a fortune. You never found the one stock that changed everything. What happened was quieter than that. Over the next 15 years, your income rose. Your lifestyle rose too, just more slowly. The difference kept buying assets while almost nobody around you could see it happening. This story is about what that invisible gap eventually became. You will see when your own contributions stopped doing most of the work. You will see when market growth became large enough to compete with your salary. You will also see the year the whole plan looked wrong. A market drop erased more money on paper than you once earned in a full year. And then something more important than $1 million balance changed. Your paycheck stopped being the thing holding your entire life together. None of this was obvious from the parking lot. Your car still looked old. Your job still looked normal. That is why nobody noticed you getting rich. For 15 years, the biggest changes in your financial life happened where nobody was looking. And most days, you barely noticed it happen. At 30, your financial life still looks ordinary. You earn $95,000 a year, hold $50,000 in investments, and keep $15,000 in cash. After taxes, rent, insurance, groceries, and a few trips, you do not feel wealthy. You are not struggling either. That matters because this story does not begin with extreme sacrifice. It begins with one rule that seems almost too small to change anything. Every time your income rises, your lifestyle gets only part of the raise. The rest goes toward ownership. You decide the rule before the next promotion arrives. That removes a dangerous negotiation with yourself later. When more money appears, you do not have to ask whether every extra dollar should become a better lifestyle. Part of the answer is already decided, and automation quietly makes sure the decision survives busy months. In the first year, about $30,000 moves into your 401k, Roth IRA, and brokerage account, including the employer match. You still eat out. You still travel. You still buy things you enjoy. The difference is that every raise is split before your lifestyle can absorb all of it. A $6,000 raise could become a nicer apartment, a larger car payment, and a little more convenience. Or part of it could quietly buy more shares every month. From the outside, those choices can look almost identical. That is why the gap is invisible. No one sees the apartment you did not upgrade to. No one notices the car payment you never added. Nobody congratulates you for keeping fixed costs lower than your income could support. But that space between what you could spend and what you actually spend becomes the fuel for everything that follows. At this stage, market returns are not doing the heavy lifting. Your portfolio is still too small for that. The real engine is the gap you keep creating between income and lifestyle. That changes how you think about getting rich. Wealth does not begin when your investments suddenly take off. It begins earlier, when your life stops expanding at the same speed as your paycheck. The first few years will still feel slow. In fact, that is the next problem. You can do almost everything right and still feel like nothing is happening. Year 1 ends with your portfolio around $84,000. Most of that progress did not come from the market. It came from you. You worked, contributed, and kept the gap alive. The portfolio helped a little, but your labor was still doing almost all of the lifting. By year 2, the balance moves past $120,000. Crossing 6 figures should feel important. Instead, Tuesday still feels like Tuesday. Your car is the same, your apartment is the same. Your coworkers do not see anything different when you walk into the office. Around you, other people are changing faster on the surface. One upgrades a car, another moves into a better apartment. Someone else starts taking more expensive trips. None of those choices are automatically wrong. They are simply visible. Your progress is harder to see because ownership does not announce itself.
By year 3, the portfolio is near $160,000, and you still feel like you are pushing the entire thing uphill. That is the frustrating part. You can follow the plan, invest consistently, avoid lifestyle inflation, and still wonder whether this is moving too slowly. The reason is simple. Compounding is working, but the base is still small. A 7% year on $100,000 is about $7,000. If you are contributing around $30,000, your paycheck is still doing far more work than your portfolio. So the early years do not feel magical. They feel repetitive. That is where many people misread the process. They expect a good strategy to feel powerful right away. When it does not, they assume they need a better investment, a bigger risk, or a faster shortcut. But nothing is broken. You are still in the phase where your effort matters more than your capital. The machine exists. It just is not large enough to impress you yet. And that distinction matters. The first 3 years are not proof that compounding is weak. They are the price of building enough capital before compounding becomes visible. Then the numbers begin to change the relationship. Once the portfolio moves beyond $200,000, a normal year can add an amount that finally feels substantial. For the first time, your money is about to stop acting like a passenger. It is about to start helping. Your portfolio crosses $200,000, and something finally feels different. You are still contributing every month, but the account is no longer waiting for you to do all the work. At a 7% return, $200,000 can produce about $14,000 in growth over a normal year. That is not guaranteed, and some years will be negative, but the scale has changed. $14,000 used to feel like a major financial event. It could cover months of rent, buy a decent used car, or fund a long trip. Now, the market can create that amount without another hour from you. By year 5, the portfolio is around $259,000. By year 6, it is near $314,000. At that level, a 7% year is worth more than $21,000 before you add another contribution. This is the first real turning point. For years, every increase depended mostly on your paycheck. You worked, saved, and transferred money into the account. The portfolio followed behind. Now, capital starts contributing beside you. Think of each $100,000 as a quiet employee. It does not show up every morning. It does not produce the same result every year. Sometimes it loses money. But over time, it can keep adding to the pile while you are working, sleeping, or doing nothing at all. That changes the emotional experience of investing. The math is still quiet, but it has stopped being small. A good market month can now move the account by thousands of dollars. For the first time, you can look at the balance and see money producing money at a scale your monthly contributions alone could never match. It is real. You stop seeing every raise only as money you can spend. You start seeing it as a chance to hire more capital. Another few thousand invested means a slightly larger machine working beside you next year. Nothing dramatic happens on the outside. You do not suddenly live differently because the account passed $300,000, but the structure underneath your life has changed. At $50,000, nearly all progress came from you. At $300,000, the portfolio can now create an amount that once took you months to save. You are still building wealth. You are just no longer building it entirely alone. And that creates the next strange effect. As the portfolio gets larger, the gap between what people can see and what you actually own begins to widen. By year 7, your portfolio is around $375,000. A year later, it is near $442,000. Then, in year 9, the balance moves past $500,000. That number feels different, but not because anyone else can see it. At 7%, a $500 portfolio can grow by about $35,000 in a normal year. That is more than you once invested across many months of work. The machine is no longer small. You have crossed a line that no purchase could display, because the important change now lives entirely on a screen. Still, nothing about your life advertises the number. At lunch, a coworker mentions that you could afford a better car. Another friend assumes you must be saving for something because your lifestyle still looks fairly ordinary. They are not insulting you. They are using the only evidence they can see. People can see the car you drive, the clothes you wear, the restaurants you choose, and the house you live in. They cannot see your 401k, Roth IRA, brokerage account, or the raises that quietly became shares instead of payments. Consumption is public. Ownership is private. That changes what the word afford means to you. At 30, you asked whether the monthly payment fit your budget. If it did, the purchase felt affordable. Now you ask a different question. What would this money own instead? A $40,000 upgrade is no longer just $40,000. It is also the future growth that money might have produced if it stayed invested. That does not mean you stop spending. You still travel. You still replace things. You still choose comfort when it matters. The difference is that spending now competes with ownership in your mind. That creates a strange social gap. Someone earning the same salary can look wealthier because more of their income is visible. A newer car and a larger house create immediate evidence. Your growing portfolio creates almost none. By year 9, you may own far more than people who appear richer than you. And that is the deeper shift. Lifestyle tells you how much someone is consuming. It tells you very little about how much of the financial system they actually own. The more your assets grow, the less useful appearances become. For the first time, you understand why getting richer can make your financial life look more ordinary from the outside. Then, the market gives you a reason to question whether any of that invisible wealth is as solid as it feels. Then, the market turns, and the invisible wealth suddenly feels very real. Your portfolio is close to $600,000 when stocks fall hard enough to cut roughly 25% from the account. On paper, almost $150,000 disappears. That number is larger than your entire portfolio was only a few years ago. It may also be more than you once earned in a full year before taxes. For the first time, the question is not how fast the money can grow. It is whether you can watch it fall without destroying the plan. You check the account more often than usual. You read headlines that make the decline sound permanent. Selling starts to feel less like panic and more like something a responsible person might do. That is what makes the moment dangerous. If you sell, the loss becomes permanent. If you stay invested, there is no promise the market stops falling tomorrow. So you look at the rest of your life. Your emergency cash is still there. Your job still covers the bills. Your housing costs never expanded to the maximum your salary could support. You are uncomfortable, but you are not cornered. A coworker facing the same decline may need to pause contributions because a larger mortgage and newer cars still demand cash every month. You do not have that pressure. The market has taken value from the account, but it has not taken control of your monthly life. That difference matters more than the balance. For years, keeping lifestyle growth below income growth helped you buy more assets. Now, the same restraint gives those assets something just as valuable: time. You do not need to sell shares to make next month's payment. You do not need the market to recover before groceries, insurance, or rent are covered. The portfolio can remain invested while the storm passes. That is when you understand that financial strength is not only about how much you own during good markets. It is also about how few bad decisions life can force you to make during bad ones. The crash still hurts. You are not calm every day, and you do not pretend the loss means nothing. But the plan survives. Eventually, the market begins to recover. The account climbs again, helped by the same contributions that continued while prices were lower. You entered the downturn thinking wealth was the number on the screen. You leave it understanding something deeper. Wealth is also the ability to give that number enough time to come back. And when it does, the next phase changes your relationship with work itself.
After the crash, the portfolio does something important. It recovers, then keeps growing. Around $700,000, a normal 7% year can add about $49,000. At $800,000, that same return is about $56,000. At $1 million, it is about $70,000. None of those gains are guaranteed. Some years will be better, some will be worse. But the scale has changed. You are still contributing from every paycheck. Maybe $45,000 to $50,000 a year now goes into investments. Yet the portfolio has reached a size where a normal year can add as much as you contribute, or even more. That is the moment capital stops feeling like a side project. One afternoon, your boss makes a decision you strongly disagree with. Years ago, your reaction would have been simple. You would have complained, gone home, and returned the next morning because the paycheck held everything together. This time, another thought appears. What if you left? You do not storm out. You do not write a resignation letter. You simply realize the question is no longer imaginary. You have enough invested assets, enough cash, and low enough fixed costs to survive a long stretch without salary. Losing a job would still matter. It just would not threaten the entire structure of your life. That changes how work feels. At 30, your salary paid the bills, funded your investments, and protected you from almost every financial problem. It was the biggest machine you had. Now, it has competition. Your portfolio can grow by tens of thousands in a year without another promotion, another meeting, or another hour at your desk. Your paycheck still matters, but its job has changed. It no longer keeps the whole system alive. It mostly helps the system grow faster. That is a more important milestone than seeing 7 figures on a screen. $1 million is a number. Optionality is a change in power. You can stay because the work is useful, interesting, or worth doing. You can leave if the environment becomes unbearable. The decision is no longer controlled entirely by the next direct deposit. That does not mean you are financially invincible. Markets can fall again, expenses can rise, life can still surprise you, but the center of gravity has moved. For years, you worked to build the portfolio. Now the portfolio has become large enough to change how much power work has over you. And almost nobody around you can see that shift. They still see the same employee, the same car, and the same ordinary routine. What they cannot see is that your salary is no longer the biggest machine in your financial life. That is freedom. At 45, you are back in the same parking lot. The old car is still there. Your coworker's newer SUV still looks more expensive than anything you drive. Nothing about the scene suggests that your investment accounts now hold more than $1.1 million. That is the point. There was no single purchase that announced success, and no big morning when you woke up feeling wealthy. The change arrived slowly enough to hide inside an ordinary life. You did not get here by refusing every good thing. You traveled. You replaced things when they needed replacing. You paid for comfort when it mattered. You simply let income rise faster than lifestyle for long enough. The difference looked small in any single year. A raise came in, part of it stayed in your life, and part of it quietly bought more ownership. Then that ownership began producing more ownership. Most of the important days never felt important. A paycheck arrived, an automatic contribution happened. The market moved up, down, or sideways. You went to work. No one applauded because there was nothing visible to applaud. The promotions mattered. The good market years mattered. Crossing $100,000, then $500,000, then $1 million mattered too. But none of those moments built the entire result by themselves. The real change came from hundreds of ordinary decisions that kept the gap alive. That is why the word rich means something different to you now. At 30, rich looked like a bigger house, a newer car, expensive vacations, and enough income to make all of it possible. At 45, rich looks more like optionality. It looks like being able to leave a bad job without panic. It looks like surviving a market crash without selling. It looks like knowing your next paycheck is useful, but no longer necessary to keep the whole structure standing. The outside of your life never needed to change at the same speed as the inside. That is why people missed it. They could see what you spent. They could not see what you owned. They could see the car getting older. They could not see the portfolio getting stronger. A coworker makes the same joke about your car again. You look across the parking lot and smile. The car is still ordinary. The office is still ordinary. Your Tuesday still looks ordinary. But underneath all of that, the financial structure of your life is completely different. Nobody saw you get rich because, from the outside, almost nothing happened. And that was the strategy all along.